All right, Krystal, what's on your radar?
Well, a new report is out detailing exactly how the labor market is likely to permanently change following the COVID-19 pandemic. As we've been covering here, of course, recovery has been wildly uneven. The very top of American society, they're doing better than ever. They actually gained extraordinary wealth. The upper middle class also faring quite well. They're moving out of expensive cities. They're taking advantage of work from home arrangements and pandemic era programs to help bolster their savings rates. And everybody else has gotten royally screwed, with the heaviest toll falling on those service workers who have either lost their jobs completely or lost hours and tips in the pandemic, or they've been forced to accept new health risks in their jobs with little to no additional compensation. Politicians, of course, were happy to call these people heroes, but didn't do a damn thing to make sure that they were ever actually treated that way. So it may not surprise you to learn that these trends are forecasted to continue into the future as our economy reorients away from travel and business trips and towards Zoom calls and home renovations. Basically, the preferences and lifestyles of the professional managerial class, they drive the entire structure of our society. They've got the money. They have the culture, they have the undying love and affection of both major political parties. So when their habits change, the entire economy changes with it. The Bureau of Labor Statistics is out with a new forecast, and it basically has terrible news for those who do not have college degrees. According to the New York Times, the new projections, quote, assume more remote work and higher demand for relevant technology services, less in-person entertainment and travel, and more investment in public health than would have happened without the pandemic. So, job categories that are expected to grow rapidly include a range of scientists, from epidemiologists to biophysicists, along with IT professionals like network administrators and web developers. Job categories expected to rapidly decline are dominated by low-wage service work, from hotel clerk to bartender, along with those who work in transit like bus drivers and flight attendants. In fact, if you look overall at the data, you find that those with a college degree, they're actually projected to see more job growth as a result of the pandemic. So coronavirus was overall beneficial economically for white-collar professionals. For those without a college degree, the trend is exactly the opposite. The pandemic has made the employment landscape significantly more grim than it already was. Now, this is just one more way that COVID has disproportionately hurt the poor and the working class. This past year, we've seen a massive upward transfer of wealth, even as millions of Americans lost their jobs, wages, hours, and are needlessly sickened by greedy corporatists who put profits over people. Some countries are taking a rather direct and novel approach to redressing the resulting inequities. Just make the rich pay. Here's the Washington Post. Argentina adopted a one-time special levy on the rich in December, demanding up to 3.5% of the total net worth of citizens who hold at least $3.4 million of assets. Also in December, struggling Bolivia passed a longer-term wealth tax hitting anyone with more than $4.3 million. Morocco this year is set to impose what they call a solidarity contribution on companies and wealthy citizens. Now, in our own country, a wealth tax would not only fund social programs, but in itself would be a small step towards bringing some balance back to a wildly imbalanced economy. It was a major point of debate in the Democratic primary. It was backed loudly by both Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. But once Biden clinched the nomination, the discussion vanished. It was replaced by actually the exact opposite approach. Biden's main tax pledge, you remember this, was to not raise taxes on anyone making less than $400K per year, a sop to the affluent professionals who make up the most devoted core of the Democratic base. In all the talk of relief plans and deficits and building back better, taxing the pandemic profiteers, it's never once been floated. And it's not because the public isn't amenable. Every time it's tested, a wealth tax finds broad bipartisan support. A New York Times survey found majority support for the policy among every demographic group except for one, which was affluent Republican men. Excuse me. It's no accident, of course, that this is the same group most likely to be subject to a wealth tax. And that polling came before a year of pandemic-related robbery by the rich that was enabled by Washington. Just think about this. According to an Oxfam report, the wealth increases of just 10 billionaires over the past year could pay for vaccine doses for everyone in the entire world. The wealth increase of Jeff Bezos just between March and September of last year, that was enough for him to give every one of the 876,000 Amazon employees a $100,000 bonus. Now, as we evaluate Biden's reconciliation relief package, which may go through as soon as this week, as we consider his infrastructure plan, which appears to be the next priority, this is the context that you have to keep in mind. While we can applaud the application of the Band-Aid, we cannot ignore the gaping wounds that are immiserating millions. The public supports a wealth tax. They support a financial transactions tax. They support a large-scale jobs program, $15 minimum wage, and our elected officials support a one-time means-tested $1,400 payment and some platitudes about our essential worker heroes. The pandemic appears to be on the downswing. Numbers are declining thanks to herd immunity and vaccinations, but the normal we are returning to looks like pain and struggle for far too many. And Sagar, what this report really underscores is that these limited approaches, one-time Band-Aid type fixes are woefully insufficient to deal with the scale of the problems that we're facing now, which frankly were problems we were facing before and have only been exacerbated and accelerated by COVID.
It's so difficult because, when we try to wrap our head around scale, and like we said, it's very hard to comprehend where we were before, which was already so bad, and where we are right now. Amazon's stock price is up 3 times to where it was almost a year ago, right? It's difficult to comprehend a thrice increase in wealth for somebody like Jeff Bezos. And actually the same thing for almost the entire technology sector. Multiple billionaires have actually been minted in the middle of this crisis. Why? DoorDash, Robinhood is another one, right? Like there are many, Airbnb, some of them are justified. But the reality here is when you look at how much money is moving upward within this, and at the same time, the bottom 30% or whatever of the country continues to be downwardly mobile in such a catastrophic way of which we know will manifest itself in its future. Right now, these are people who already had no houses, who lost their homes or ability to have home equity in 2008 and never fully recovered at an underemployed wage. Now, what are they going to do? Like, you have an economy, as you pointed out, like millions of jobs are exiting. There's actually a way in order to make sure some of this comes back, but if you go out and you try and get a loan or something right now, if you're poor, you're basically screwed. You are going to get, you can basically get a very high interest rate and more because they don't trust you. The financial system is not built whatsoever to serve you, except in order to extract wealth out of your pocket. And think about if we flipped that over. Yeah. That's the part where I'm more interested.
Right. Yeah. You and I were both floored yesterday when we covered this poll. We had Pavlina Cherneva on. Yeah, that's right. She's an economist. Right. She's in favor of federal jobs guarantee. And this poll that came out from the New York Times and Gallup, 93% of Americans support some sort of a large-scale federal jobs program, not specifically a federal jobs guarantee. But that tells you how insane. I can't imagine. If you ask people, are you in support of, puppies and rainbows, you wouldn't get 93% support. Yeah. And 93% of Americans are like, yes, create some good, well-paying jobs. And yet that's not even in the conversation, not being discussed at all. And then we've witnessed this huge upward transfer of wealth. Again, wealth tax really, really, really popular. And not just with Democrats, with independents and also, yes, with Republicans. And that's not in the discussion whatsoever. And look, these things matter. First of all, they matter because they help to ameliorate some of the how will you pay for it conversation, but they actually matter as a tool to help keep the society together. Because when you see this just wild, out of control, gilded age level inequality, it really does it does damage to the foundational structure of democracy. Something actually even Alan Greenspan warned about, that this level of inequality is not something that democratic society can take. And all we've done is accelerate that. So if you hated Donald Trump, if you hate this era of the fringes coming into the mainstream, if you hate all of that, you should be the first one to support these policies, because if you don't do something big to change the direction we're going in, you are going to get Donald Trump on steroids. That's what's coming down the pike.
100%.
Next on Rising, editor-in-chief at The Real News and host of Working People podcast, Max Alvarez, and senior congressional correspondent of The Daily Caller, Henry Rogers. They're going to join us for Team Rising. That's when Rising returns.